Let's talk all about AI in business. It's hosted by Brent Muller. Welcome to the Future Proof Podcast.
Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of Future Proofed. This is a podcast where we're decoding how founders, leaders, and execs are changing the business landscape using emerging technology like AI, data, and automation. And so if you're looking to future-proof your business, you're definitely in the right place. And so before we jump into today's episode, as everybody knows, my partner and I, we own a growth consulting company that installs AI systems. So if you just want to figure out how AI can move the needle in your business without any sales pitch, there's links in the show notes for a 30-minute consult with us. Happy to talk to anybody that is looking to figure out how to do that. But let's jump into today's episode. I am joined today by James Dellinger, the founder of Fourscore Digital. James, thank you for joining us today.
Brent, I really appreciate you having me on today and having a little discussion about barbell bets and the nature of driving innovation during times of change and,
constant
internal
change,
and
right?
external chaos. Yeah.
Yes, I love that. Yeah, exactly. These changing times are like constant state of change and the varying degrees of chaos. So love it. So let's jump right in. Let's talk about your background, right? And your kind of journey leading up to Fourscore, and then some of the things you're doing today. And then we'll get into the barbell bets for sure.
So I'm originally from Georgia, and I grew up here, and then I actually left. I went to George Washington University up in DC, and I kind of stayed. And I thought I was going to have that sort of DC type career path of think tanks and in and out of government, that sort of thing. And I kind of ended that in a newspaper position at the Washington Examiner before. And in that role, I was heavily involved in a digital transition of, at the time, there was digital folks, and then there was what was internally termed dead tree. So you were dead tree or you were digital, and trying to fuse the way people thought about content and the focus. And you
think about today, how foreign that concept is today, where we're at today versus when you were going through it. So yeah, I totally get it.
It was early. It was very early Twitter. It was very early Google ads. I was in a mental headspace then of, all right, if you get 1 million page views a month, obviously that's going to make you money. And all the remnant stuff that was out there, it really wasn't in 08 yet to the effect that it is today, and nor did the value accrue like it does for video content specifically now, which is much more intensely lucrative. But it taught me, like, listen, there's a lot of digital stuff I don't know yet. So I ended up going to graduate school in Dublin, Ireland, Dublin City University. They have a very specific program because when the Irish tech scene was taking off, you had this huge division between suits, the finance guys, and engineers. And neither really like to interact and talk with each other. And it's not like that's not also a problem here in the States. So they said, listen, we need to create an educational awareness and program that is decidedly to cross-pollinate this, so that you have tech people who have some business understanding and can look at a spreadsheet and not have their eyes glaze over, or have somebody with a business understanding know when the lead dev is lying to them and it doesn't actually need 9 months worth more of work and they're just mad at them for other reasons and they're pushing them off. Right. So the idea is that there has to be folks that can cross-pollinate between. And that's what I learned then, but I also learned, hey, what I'm learning now is going to be ineffective and not probably financially viable in a year or 3 years out. So you have to be mentally prepared for that speed of change and that delta to be so extreme that it's that process and not being scared of learning that new process. Otherwise, you're roadkill if you're not reinventing what you need to do, how it's going to happen. And
agreed.
A lot of that AI innovation, well, we used to have machine learning and we used to have other topics that basically have all been rolled into the AI innovations now. But it goes back quite a bit, and from theory to dev. I mean, I'm so technologically old. I remember, and I could still hand build an RSS feed if I really had to. And I remember having to do it because in 07, 08, there was no distribution. So what's the point of producing a lot of content, if no one's going to actually enjoy it because it's not actually being syndicated, right? So that concept of that syndication was an early one that then it said, okay, now we're automating it. Okay, now all of the places it's going to are going to be more strict, whether it's the Google ecosystem, Google News, and a lot of the other things that were big, I don't know, 20 years ago that now are dead or desolate or dying.
Right.
And the irony to me now is wrapping my mind around, hey, you know what also is dying? Search. You know what search powers? Search powers the entire ad ecosystem that Google can handle. And it's
100%.
interesting to think that now in 2 or 3 more years, we will have witnessed the birth of search to, well, it's just getting folded into, why would I search for something when I can just ask the AI for it and I'm going to get better answers?
Yeah, last month, was it last month? Yeah, I think last month was the first time that AI engagement surpassed search. Like, yeah, and you're right, that trend's only
Right.
going to go way more skewed.
So it's
Right.
very weird to mentally get in the space of, well, Google's this cash machine. And honestly, YouTube is still enormous and you don't have to
Amazing.
be,
Yeah,
you
one of the
know,
most underutilized platforms and underappreciated platforms out there, for sure.
I work to it, I think to it, and then I see the way, let's call them the undertons interact with it and love, and they're just, it is native. They don't watch linear content. They live in
Right.
those memes and those somewhere second to 8 minute sort of zone. So I don't know if it's great
Yep.
for attention
Real
span.
stories, totally get it. Yeah.
Exactly. So, but point being is Google was the juggernaut then, and now, well, it's just a vehicle to get YouTube, Waymo, and 10% of SpaceX if you if you're an investor, right? Which is a very strange place to see
And when you
the
say Google,
juggernaut.
you mean search, right?
Well,
You
no,
mean
I'm talking
search.
about
Yeah.
as the company. But if you look at how their revenue is structured, the amount of earnings that are totally cooked in, it is cooked into that ad operation, that ad side. And because I spent so much time and previous versions of Fourscore in that ad space, it's just unbelievable. Because there was a point in time where you had Google, and then you had this. I call it a boomlet. It was between, because it was after I got back to Georgia and I started getting into the ad space. It was right before starting Fourscore Digital. You had probably 12 to 15, maybe 25 different ad tech companies go public, and they were all over, and they were all fighting and competing. And then it got really strange because everybody was reselling each other's inventory on this side, and then their quality on the other side. Well, I would say, the consolidation really started in 2015, 16. And then as soon as now it's basically Google, Amazon, and Trade Desk. And that's what you got left. And before, and obviously Meta's in there too, but it's
Right.
unique,
But just
it's its
different.
own
Yeah.
unique ecosystem. Maybe X, maybe some other things that are out there that are technically still part of it. But as far as the volume and the manner at which Google ate off-site page for any content creator, it's part of all the DOJ lawsuits and all the antitrust lawsuits. It has to do with that sort of zone. And I don't know how many times, and this is very obscure, where they would say, okay, we're going to get rid of the cookies. We don't need to do cookies anymore. People don't like it.
That's why they keep kicking that down the road. No, now another year. I don't
Well,
think they're ever going to get rid of cookies now.
The reason they couldn't is because it would go back to court, because all the other vendors out there and companies that still rely on it would say,
Yep.
hey, this is restraint of trade. You're the only one who has the data set big enough to not need it, right? And that's where they got caught, which is that's a problem if the thing that consumers are asking to change also is required by any of the other people to compete with you. And I only kind of bring this up because a more recent challenge that happened probably about a summer or two ago. There was a great transition with Google Analytics and switching over all of the Google Analytics tool sets and products for e-commerce or content folks. People would say, why are you charging me to fix a free product? And I said, well, that free product cooks into everything else that helps you earn money or that you're spending on the marketing side. Otherwise, you have no data. But when they did the transition was, hey, we're no longer doing third-party cookies. Now they're first-party cookies. Wink, wink. They're actually living on your site. You own them, sure, owner. You're kind of leasing them back to us so that we can give you this lay of the land and that everything still works and we can pretend. But what it ended up being was this giant mess that had to be cleaned up, especially on a lot of more legacy systems, and some older Magento stuff was a lot uglier to tidy. But the point is, they needed to say, we're not using cookies anymore in this capacity. We understand, we hear you. But it just ended up being a ton of work because people were so dependent on that data flow for their day-to-day business operations.
Yeah, totally agreed. Totally agreed. So, James, let's get into the barbell bets. I think it's a really interesting framework that you're talking about. Can you kind of talk to everybody about what you're doing there?
Sure. I was a big student of history, and something I kind of in my reading was, hey, you go back and just do some economic history. I prefer the economic stuff myself, but you have all these different time periods of there was a panic here, or there was a panic there. What caused it? What happened? What are the implications? Well, we don't have panics anymore, but we do have these different cycles in the economy. Some of them are credit related, some of them are business cycle related, some of them are trade, tariff related that we're talking a lot about now. Some of them are public market, or bonds, private credit. And you kind of have to think deeply on, listen, that never went away. There's some logic that still exists. And you could say, okay, well, you could run a business like a a Great Depression fortress if you want to. Yeah. But if you do that during when we had the zero interest rate environment, well, you're burning money in inflation, right? So you have to understand that at some point, you have to make decisions that are going to get you on both sides of that risk curve, which is how much risk are you willing to throw out there because you believe in the AI revolution now, the ad tech and content revolution of 10 or 15 years ago. I mean, I still remember reading in the journal saying, man, what a folly it was for Google to buy YouTube. It's not making any money. They don't know how to monetize it. And now it is their safest cash cow as far as that ad zone going forward, right? So that's this strange sort of zone, which is sometimes that strangest worst bet, the Seward's folly, you buy in Alaska from the Russians in the 80s, can then turn, oh yeah, there's gold. Oh yeah, there's oil. Oh yeah, there's honestly near endless natural gas that can be turned into loads of products for existence. Well, that's no different when you're allocating your time, your money, and your attention to what's changing in the changing environment. About 2 years ago, I said, hey, I've always wanted to understand the function and be able to I want to read Python and not be scared of it when it's my turn to go into it. Or someone says, hey, we've got this problem. Okay, so I said, what's the easiest way where I feel like I'm getting some practical skill sets? And so I did a nighttime postgraduate program that was through Georgia Tech, and it was awesome. It was a great experience. And now with the AI revolution, all of the machine learning theory is really wrapped into now take this ML and take it into all the large language models. And so when people start saying, hey, this is moving, this is what it's capable of doing, it's amazing to see what people thought as theory 2 years ago is now practical reality. And I say, listen, based on this now, this is where we're going to be in 6 months, a year, 3 years.
Yeah, the probability models now actually are pretty accurate. They're not 100%, but if you could keep it into a window like you're talking about with 6 months, the trends that it's able to analyze, it really can turn what you said were used to be theories and speculation into, there's a high probability this is going to happen.
Well, and I like to use there's more, obviously there's more than one way to skin the cat, right? But you use the Waymo self-driving modeling because that's all AI. You use the Tesla version, so is that. But they're making two different bets on how you get the data, how you make it perform, and so you get down to the 99.9 safest, best, and if you ask 3 or 4 years ago, people say, well, maybe it's another 10 years off, maybe it's another 15 years off. But every time either of them push an update or add a new city, it seems like its total takeover is sooner than later, and that timeline moves forward and not further out. And that's kind of been the thing that surprised me, where I had to come back and be like, wait a second, This is no longer a Moore's Law issue and total raw power or where you're putting it. It is how much data can you get under the curve to then come up with that probabilistic set that ends up being as close to perfect as possible.
Yeah. So real quick, just for everybody out there, explain where the term barbell bets came from and how that plays into this.
I read about it somewhere a while ago, and it was just an idea and a way to try to organize your thoughts around. And the way I mentally do this is I like to use, I'm a big fan of he's a quantitative finance professor. I got deep, and this was years ago when I was very young, about, okay, index investing versus factor investing versus taking, I don't know, your top 5 best ideas, and that's kind of trend, right? And trying to figure all of those things out, where then it seemed like, listen, you can churn all you want, and then people go, you've read Random Walk, throw the darts, it's going to be the same no matter what, or just all that Reddit voo and chill, you're wasting time, don't even worry about it. And then you look at things and say, well, if value and momentum have good, decent, probabilistic, quantitative finance science behind them, why do they both work even though they're so distinctly different, right? And that, to me, in a financial investing sense, is that barbell, because they are so uniquely different. But then you take
the weighting on either side is what you're talking about, right? Got it.
So do you know that right now is going to be, were we supposed to know that, 7 of the top public stocks were going to represent most of the growth over the last 2.5 years? No. But if you had certain momentum going, right, and that was your strategy, you would have been crushing it. But if you were saying, well, I just want to clip coupons over here and give me some dividends and grow on, no, the other 493 were not doing that, right? So But the point is, it can also flip, and then value's hot and momentum and beta just get absolutely crushed. Well, it's not a bad model for how you interact with your time, how you place your personal energy, and it's no different. So you have to find those locations so that you can add that value. And I've also read a good bit out there in that sort of argument of, hey, listen, it's just about the flows. There's a number of people out on FinTwit that are all about, listen, whatever you do, you buy, sell, it doesn't matter. Just those flows, those consistent flows. And you say, wait a second, if the flows are the background, any marginal push that you make as a investor, human in an enterprise, you're going to be the difference between something actually happening and working out or it not happening at all. And that's not to say, like, because I've been in tough spots before where you say, listen, the more I do here, the worse things are going to get. So then your answer is to take a sit back, let other people figure it out, and handle it as it needs to be. But then you have to know, okay, this is an opportunity, go hard, fully invest, and go for it. And whether it's, I had a very strong ride in that ad tech environment space, and then I had a lot of fun in learning lots of the ins and outs of the way that data impacts e-commerce and the way that some of the operational effects can impact the perception or the reality of performance in that e-commerce business, right? And so if you asked me 2 years ago where some of the pressure points that you need to push on, I would say you got to look in those operational sides of things. Maybe there's one person that does this one task instead of 3 people knowing how to do it if somebody's out, sick, or then it doesn't get done for 3 or 6 weeks.
Those single points of failure that you don't even realize are there, right?
Exactly. Or, and as you're talking this AI revolution, okay, well, it's like, how does this data come over? Just some of those practical, boring, how do the finance people know that it's time for this to happen? Well, somebody goes and moves a spreadsheet from here to there. I say, well, why can't some of those operations be automated by basically tech data so that things are linked up properly and that everyone is getting read in? It's like you
all
you
the time. It allows the whole organization to make better data-driven decisions. No doubt about it.
You're spending good money on an ERP over here, and your accounting team and your finance team are using it, and then you're spending good money over here on your various platforms to sell, but they don't talk to each other at all.
Right. And then your CRM sometimes on another. Yeah, exactly.
Right. So then you have to make the argument, and it's a tough sell. I've seen it made, and I've been part of that process before, which is, listen, you're paying 6 or 8 people full salary, benefits, you name it, and that's great. They're very nice people, but you could have a software solution that costs one person that automates all of it, and then you wrap the service agreements, and then
Right.
you have the
And then
highest
you
skilled.
could replace those people or put those people in smarter roles within the company.
Exactly.
Right. It may not be
Exactly.
the same people, but right, you can move those roles to help the company grow faster
Right.
because they're not bogged down on the menial tasks. This is
Right.
one of my number one use cases for AI right there.
Have you played with any of the Excel AI tools yet, or the Google Sheets
Mm-hmm.
AI tool? Like,
Yep.
some of that
Yep.
stuff is out of control because there's so many people out there, and they're very talented users of heavy operations. But when you get a tool set where you can put in and use just plain English and not have to know all the macro
All the formulas
codes.
and the macros. Right. Exactly.
Right. I was working on a project probably a year and a half ago, and my boss at the time I was working with, I said, well, how are the 65 formulas all in a line? I said, did you look up every single one of that and iterate all 65? I don't know. I iterated it in natural language in the AI app and then ported it over, and the iteration, which would have taken, I don't know, a team 3 to 6 weeks, took him like a weekend. I was like, wow, this shows me where just people who know they want to be productive, know they have a deadline, and know they could do this or explore, it just opens a window versus saying, well, I know 3 formulas.
All right.
But you don't have to know very many
and James,
at all.
that's where AI, in my opinion, right now needs to be someone's best friend and digital coworker, because they can do 5 to 10x the work, right? Something that it would take 3 to 6 weeks now took them, a day or 2 days.
Right.
That is how you get so much more efficient. But what people are not measuring is that downstream effect and the impact on the business by having that data more real time and more readily available to make smarter decisions. And I'll give you a great example. A similar story. We had a client who had, they had a CRM and their sales team would put the products that they sell in there, right? The problem is those products never made it downstream to operations and then to technology. So by the time you got down to technology, you're like, these products over here don't match what the hell we're selling. And you're like, how can you run an organization where what the tech team is building and what the sales team is selling are not even the same thing, right? And that's the kind of stuff, the disconnect that companies have. And I'm like, how do you get better? How do you start to make smarter decisions if you can't even get that right, right? So to your point, this is where you really have to figure out your use cases and start to mandate these kind of changes within your organization.
Right. Well, and saying, I did a whole, probably 15 months doing data science and learning lots of tool sets. The biggest tool I didn't learn, but I learned in the 2.5 years after, was Power Query, right? When Power Query showed up, and that's such a powerful tool set that as soon as some of these for Excel show up for AI that actually still does Power Query stuff as well, I have no idea for your average person at a desk trying to solve business problems that are not that uncommon. I mean, they could be very complicated, but as far as its normal operations, listen, at this point, understanding how to work the prompts and which one to work, because at this point, all the models are a little different. You're going to get some things that are different back. You could look at
That's why you got to test
OpenAI.
different ones.
Right.
Yep.
Versus like Microsoft Skin of OpenAI is obviously going to tell you more stuff about Excel if you ask it a question about Excel, right? Because
exactly.
So it depends on what you're looking for. So like you were saying, hey, is Google search dead, or is the AI going to enhance? Is it going to take over, or will it merge? And I'm sure all of that search data is going to make the AI stronger and better once we get there. But I'm sure at
Google's
this
going to
point,
catch up for that reason. To your point earlier, they have the most data of anybody out there by far, and they're just biding their time. Gemini will catch up, and even the last release of, like, I don't know if you've done a Google Meet in a while, but their new
it's gotten
AI
way
note
better.
taker
It's gotten way
blows
better.
everybody
So
else out
much
of the
better.
water. but it came out of nowhere, right? I'm like, where's this been for the last year, right? Like,
well,
it's amazing.
It was there. There were some third-party tool sets that were doing pretty good at it, and then all of a sudden, I'm like, wait, the native one isn't bad anymore, and it's better than any of the ones
really
people
good.
Are paying for.
I was blown away the other day when I saw the meeting summary. I'm like, this beats, Otter and Fathom and all those Fireflies. I was like, wow. And again, no disrespect to those tools. They've been on the leading edge of this, but really, really good. Hey, we're coming up against time, but I really want to ask you that last question, James. If you could fix one thing in your business with AI, what would that be?
Making me stick to a schedule and actually not push into other things. I don't know how to do that. I set a dozen alarm clocks on my phone, but that seems not to help. Or I just don't like that feeling of saying, hey, you're texting somebody saying, sorry, we're running late. I'm going to have to push another 30 minutes or push here. You know.
James, we have a personal assistant we built. We'll let you demo it. Yeah, it's good. Honestly, this is exactly the kind of stuff that we built based on our podcast, like feedback. It's great because we know that the problems we think that people have are not the real problems, right? And so I got to tell you, you're probably 10th or 12th person that said, that's what I need. And that's what's amazing to me. And again, not that you have to get our personal, but it's just something you could demo to say, oh my God, I could do this and make myself that much more productive, right? And so I love that. Again, I love this feedback, and we're going to push this out to everybody so people get, right, that what are people asking for? And that's a great one, because I agree. There's things, if we could do the note taker, why can't we take that a step further and say, oh, by the way, I talked to these 15 people. I got these 35 emails today. Here are the top 3 I really got to respond to and why. Yeah.
Right. Well, it doesn't even have to be an online meeting. I have an app. Have you ever played with Wave? Wave is so you can have it record the meeting. I've been to meetings for be as simple as your kids or a business meeting. You have it record, it takes notes, and then you've got it. You can send as a PDF or as something you can mark up.
That's really cool.
And it's been the
really cool.
Best productive thing of saying, hey, I really wish I remember what everyone said, and then you have it written down later.
I love it. Love it. James, thank you so much for spending time with us. Tell everybody how to get in touch with Foursquare Digital. We'll have all the links below when we go live.
Sure. You can find me at my About Me or on LinkedIn, or where I'm resting my day hat at Prismatic.ai, and you can learn more about what we're working on. And we have a AI element to our product as well, trying to help people solve that decision. Like when you go to McDonald's and you're ordering and you end up with 3 or 4 times more of the food than you wanted, but you actually were happy you did it.
Awesome. Yeah. And we'll have those links below too, so people can check that out. But James, thank you for spending time with us. Thank you for sharing your insights. And I love the barbell analogy and your barbell wrist theory. So it's fantastic.
Yeah. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. And I hope you have an awesome rest of your day.
You too. Hey, that wraps up this episode of Future Proof, where we are talking with leaders, execs, and founders about how they're using AI smarter and more efficiently to grow their companies. Thank you to James, and thank you for everybody for watching. We'll see you on tomorrow's episode.
If you're ready to embrace change and lead with innovation, be sure to subscribe and never miss an episode. Thanks for tuning in to the Future Proof Podcast.